In this tutorial, we're going to spend a little bit of time theming this application that's on screen now. So this is an application that we've been building over a few weeks now. It's a CouchDB and CouchDB powered Ionic 2 blog. And so I've done about, I think, 4 or 5 tutorials on this now. And we've just been stepping through how to use CouchDB, how to use CouchDB, and use that to build a sort of blogging application. And so if I jump in here, you can see the documents in this database here that we're using to power the application. But that's not really what I want to focus on in this tutorial. If you do want to see how to build this as it is so far, I'll link to the tutorials for that. I may or may not build on this further in the future. It does most of the basic things now. You can see a list of blog posts. You can go into a blog post and see comments. You can add a comment. You can add posts. But what should be pretty clear from looking at this now is that it's pretty ugly. It's just using bare bones default basic components, no styling whatsoever, no thought really put into how this looks. It's just the core functionality that we've put in there so far. So I thought I would create this tutorial. I wanted to make this look nicer, and I thought it would work well as a bit of a video, another sort of live coding video where I sort of just step through theming an application as I would do it sort of just on my own. I don't have an idea of what I want to do already, so I'm just going to go through on screen, try out a few things, and see if we can make this look a little bit nicer than it is right now. So what I would do first when trying to make an application look nicer, give it a nice theme, is to come up with a nicer color scheme and make use of Ionic's primary and secondary colors and so on. And so a good way I find to do that, I often use this site called Flat UI Colors. Sometimes I'll just pick a color in Photoshop or something like that. But I find these there's just a few colors here. It's not very overwhelming, but they're just nice sort of base colors to use. And they look kind of modern, and they're kind of bright and nice to use. So I often use a color from here. And another good site that I found recently is this color schema. And what this allows you to do is put a color in here, and it's going to give you a palette of colors that are similar to that color that work well with it. So a good thing to do is maybe just pick a color from here, shove it in the color schema, and it'll give you some nice colors that you can use as the the primary, secondary, and light colors in the theme folder here in the variables.scss. And then we can use these throughout the application and get some nice colors going on. So what I'm going to do is, where are we? We'll go for the red color here, which is kind of like the Apache CouchDB logo. I could just use that color, but we'll go with this one. And I'll just paste that in here, and then we'll build up a nice sort of palette to use. And so I'll use that as the primary color. So we'll just put that there, and we'll go with this pinkish color as the secondary color. So we'll just paste that in here, and we use this as the light color, and then this as the dark. And I'm probably not going to use the danger color. We'll use this one. I'm probably not going to use it, but if we do, we'll use that. So this is going to be a very red application. Usually it would be nice to have a sort of color to contrast that with, but I think this will work well for the CouchDB application. So now that we have our colors, let's make sure I've saved that. And then we're going to use those throughout our pages. So we'll go back into this now, and let me just reserve this so that we can see changes as we do them. Okay, so I've got the application reserved now. You can already see that because we've changed the primary color, the plus icon here has changed to red. Same with these icons as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to make use of those now in a few places throughout the application. So let's try, first of all, changing that nav bar. So if I come into that home page here, and we'll just add the primary color to the nav bar. Apparently I forgot to come back through my time machine today. That's a really old way to do it in Ionic. So you used to add it, but it is now color equals and then the name. Cool, so we can see the red now, and icons have also changed to white now to so that it's actually visible on that the background with the primary color. And I might also try to use that same color as the background color for the entire application. So if I come into the variables file again here, and we can set a shared variable called background color. I forget if it uses a hyphen or not. Let me just try this. So we'll just use the primary color as a background color. See if that works. Yeah, so now the entire thing is red, which I think will work. We've got to make some changes first though. What I might do is remove these lines from the list, and perhaps we might even change this to be some cards instead of a list. So right now we've just got Ion items in a list, but it might look nice because these are blog posts. Perhaps we want to make these kind of their own individual cards, more like a Facebook feed, like a blog style thing. So I'll just change this into, I can delete the list. And we'll just change these into Ion cards. And we'll put the post title inside of, we'll add that inside of the Ion card header. And then inside of the Ion card content, we don't have anything to put in there yet, but let's just see what this looks like. I'll just write something. Save that and take a look at it. Okay, so now we've got some cards there, which again need to be styled a bit more, but this is looking more kind of blog posty, I think. So what we might do is just pull in a bit of content from the post to have where I've just put hello, and then maybe even, we'll style the backgrounds of these to make them white. So let's just do that for now. So if I look into the database here, if I go into one of the blog posts, you can see we've got different fields here. So we can make use of this content. Perhaps we only want to return just the start of it, perhaps a little snippet of the content. So I'll replace this with post.content. Cool, so right now we can see the entire content of the blog post, which isn't really a problem for these ones because they just got some small amount of dummy data in there. But for this one, it's quite long, probably too long for a little summary. So there's a few ways we could, I guess, deal with this issue. We could have a separate summary field perhaps and bring that in. Instead, we could run this through a pipe perhaps, so that we just trim this content down to a reasonable length. Or we could even just use CSS directly and just set a max width, or rather a max height on these posts here. And I think that's what I'm going to do. It's I guess probably the easiest thing to do right away, and it makes sense in the context of this video. So I'm going to set these to a specific height. Now I don't know what that is yet, so I'm going to just inspect element here, and we're going to modify that directly through the debugger. So if I click on one of these cards here, we'll click on the big one, and I can now set some specific height on here. So we'll set a max height, so it can be smaller, but we can say I don't want this to be any bigger than say 200 pixels. And so that's probably a reasonable size. It might go down a little bit more. So 150 pixels. So that works pretty well, I think. Okay, so now that we know that 150 pixels is a nice height, we can go and actually add that to our SCSS here. So if I create a selector here called Ion Card, because we just want to apply this to all the cards on this page. We'll just set the max height to 150 there. And one thing that I typically do when theming is I'll surround all of my rules here with an iOS and MD class. And so this will target things specifically on just iOS and Android. Now the reason I do this is because it increases the specificity of the rules that we're creating here. So in CSS, when there's two rules that are targeting the same thing, the one that's more specific will win. So Ionic has a lot of their own rules, which can sometimes beat your rules when you're trying to theme something. So by making ours more specific with this generic class, most of the time our rules will win, and you don't have to worry about doing things like adding important or something like that. So we'll save that, check that it all works. Okay, so yeah, it looks like we've got a 150 pixel tool summary there now. And so what we might do now is just keep styling this card. So let's try background color of, we'll do F6, which is kind of like a off-white type color. It's probably a bit too gray. Yeah, we'll go with something a little bit whiter than that. So you can also bring up the debugger here, click on that card, and you can see we've got the background color there. You can just click that, and then we can sort of mess around with this slider here till we get something we like. And why not just straight up white? That seems to work well. So we'll just use that instead. And now I probably want to bring a little bit more, I guess, focus on the title of the post rather than the summary here. So I'm going to create another rule nested in here for the Ion card content. And let's try just a slightly fuller, smaller font size. Just knock that down just a little bit. And I reckon maybe even a little bit more of a gray color. One thing, it's probably better just to set the color, but I'm going to cheat a little bit here and just reduce the opacity of the text so that it's not so visible. Yeah, so we've got a 0.5 opacity there. That seems to work well. Again, it's probably better technically to actually just have that as that gray color there rather than reducing the opacity, but I'll leave it as that for now. Another thing that might work well here is an image for each of the blog posts. So we could perhaps either have an image right at the top, or we could have a little icon off to the side. So I think it will probably work well on top of the card, I think. So we could either put it inside of the card, or maybe we'll try, we could do it outside of the card if we move this loop over a div, for example. But what I'll do, I'll try putting it inside of the header first, and we'll see if that works. So what I often do for just testing out images is just use placeholder. So it's placeholder.it, and then you can just specify any size of image you want, and it'll pull in a placeholder image at that size. So we'll try a 600 by 300, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so we've got our image getting pulled in there. Of course, we've set that sort of max height on the card there, so it's pushing all the rest of the content down. So we'll worry about that later. But for now, we'll just try and get this image set up so that it's kind of aligned to all the corners, so there's no padding or anything there. So to do that, if I hover over the Ion card header here, you can see we have a bunch of padding. The green stuff is padding, and margins will show up as orange. So we want to remove that padding there. So if I just untick this, you can see that's basically what we want. So all I'm going to do then is apply a padding of 0 to the Ion card header. So we'll come into this file again here, the CSS file or the style file, and add a rule for Ion card header, and we'll set the padding to 0. Okay, so we've got our image up there now, and I think that's probably actually a pretty good size for it. We'll just have to expand the card so that it still displays our content as well. So let's bring up that card again, and we set this max height of 150, so let's try set that to say 250. Yeah, so that's a pretty good size, I think. Maybe 300 even. Yeah, I think that works pretty well. So we'll change that max height to 300. Okay, so we got the height set. Obviously now we have to fix the padding for, say, this title here. Because we removed the padding from the card itself, now everything is flowing to the edges as well as the image. So we'll just add some individual padding for this content area. We might just create a container for it. Before we do that though, the line here is kind of annoying. So what we can do on the header is we can just use no border, and that's going to remove that little bottom border for us there. Yeah, I think I prefer that. And what I actually think might be cool as well is if we add a little bit of a drop shadow, or a box shadow rather, to that nav bar there. Now it can be quite hard to remember how to use, how to write the drop shadow to kind of position it how you want. So I often use this thing called just I forget the site, I think it's box shadow generator. I'll just bring that up now. Yeah, so I usually just come to this site here, cssmatic.com/box shadow, and then you can just kind of play around with the shadow. So we'll just create something here that I think will look good. We'll add a bit of a blur to that. Reduce the spread a little bit. And 75 opacity is probably good. Okay, so we can just copy these and drop it into our CSS. So we'll add that to the nav bar. And if you're wondering why there's multiple values here, this is just for different browsers. So this is for Mozilla, this is for the WebKit browsers, and this is just, I guess, the normal property. I think this should work on both iOS and Android with just this one line here. But this, I guess, will increase the browser compatibility if you'd wanted to run this on things other than iOS and Android. Yeah, it's been a while since I've looked at where exactly these work, but that's why there's the multiple lines there. Okay, so now we have this shadow under the nav bar here, which is probably a little bit much now. I think it's almost good. What I might do is just reduce that vertical length a bit. So which one is that? -3. So that's just this first value here, the 1. So we'll just change that to -3, and we'll take another look. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So we've kind of got this more of 3D kind of effect now, where it looks like the nav bar is kind of floating above the page a bit. So I like that more. Now I'm going to get back on track, get back to what we were originally talking about, and that's adding the padding back to these posts here. So as I mentioned, or at least I hope I mentioned, I said it in my head at least, I'm going to add a container around the content area. Well, actually, I can't add a content around all of it because the image is in the header bits, still where the title itself is. So what I will do is I'll have to add some specific styling for this post title here. And I'm actually going to make this a header. I thought I did that already. We'll give that give it a heading 2. We'll see how that looks. Maybe use H1. We'll see how that looks. We'll go with the heading 2, and we'll just change the font size manually a bit, I think. So what we are going to do is we're going to add some padding to that, or a margin rather, to that H2, and then we're also going to add some padding to the card content, which there is kind of already some padding there already. We'll see how it looks once we've done this one. So we'll create, so that's inside of Ion card. So we can do like the H2 in here, or you could do it out here. It doesn't really matter because there's no other H2s on the page. But we'll just do it up here, and we will we'll give it a margin of say 20 pixels. I should probably do this in the debugger to make it a bit easier. Yeah, that's good. I like that distance. And then probably make this a bit bigger. Maybe just change the font weight to bold. Yeah, that works. So we'll give this a bold font weight. And then we just want to move this as well, the summary area, which is Ion card content. And so that's pretty well positioned already, I think. I just want to give it a bit more of a left margin, I think. So we'll do the left and the right margin. Maybe we'll try 25 pixels for that one. So we'll just do margin left. We'll just do 15 pixels each side, just to start off with, just to see what that looks like. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. Actually, no, I've changed my mind. I want it to be change it to 10. I want that to be aligned with the title here. Oh, that's wrong as well. I think it's 5. Yeah, I think that looks better when it's aligned. And I think the last thing I might try just for now is changing the border radius on this card here. Not a huge fan of the rounded corners, so and you can see here, see that orange around the sides, that's the margin that I was talking about before. That shows up as orange in the debugger here. And so we've got a border radius of 2 pixels right now, so I'm just going to untick that. And yeah, I think the no border radius, so if you focus on the corners here, you can see it's slightly rounded and then not rounded when I untick that. So I think we'll just take that off, and I think that's only a iOS only thing, but we will apply that to everything. So if I want to add some styles to our card, I might just move this up there. Set border radius to 0. And I'll just refresh that to make sure that worked properly. As you may notice, when you change styles, your application doesn't necessarily do a full refresh. It just kind of does a hot replace for the style, which can, if you are sort of debugging in here as well, you might make a manual change here that's kind of overriding something you did. So sometimes it helps just to do a full refresh of the page to check that the styles you have in here are doing all the work, not things that you've manually changed in the debugger. So I originally planned to do basically the whole application in this video. I think the video is going a bit long now. My fan on the computer is starting to complain, so I might have to cut this off here. But I probably will do another video where I go through styling the rest of this content and this the post content and the comments area and stuff like that. And so what we've done so far certainly isn't amazing. We've just really just fiddled around with a few things, but I think it looks a lot nicer now, obviously. A little bit more like what a blog application would look like. And I might just check, see what it looks like in the S5 on an Android device. And yeah, pretty much the same. Not a whole lot of difference here. It's good to check on both to see what they look like, because there are a few style differences between iOS and Android. So you might do something that looks nice on the iPhone, but it could look awful on the Android. So yeah, always good to check both. So yeah, I'm going to leave that video there for now. Hope you enjoyed this, hope it was useful, and I will see you in the next video.